So next we have, related to rhythm, is polyrhythm. And what polyrhythm is defined as is having more than one rhythm occurring at the same time. And this is somewhat in contrast to European music, where rhythms tend to line up on top of each other. So for example, if you got a pulse of quarter notes going, on my snapping finger here, okay, rhythm wise it would fall right on top of it. So ta 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 ta. Okay, so there wouldn't be a rhythm that would be a little off from that. Polyrhythm is usually found in Africa, and it's derived from music of a folk nature that you can find in Africa, where at least two different layers of rhythm are present. One serves as the foundation, and you could look at this as kind of like the beat or the pulse part of it. In jazz, the foundation layer is persistent, repetitive, and plays the role of the timekeeper. Again, the beat part of the pulse part. The instruments that take on this role include the bass and the ride cymbal, which is in the drum set. And you could kind of hear that in the last example that we had here too, where you could kind of hear the bass part playing the dome, 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 and the rhythm ride cymbal going along at the same speed as well. Jazz soloists, along with picking out different melodic lines and notes, can also add different rhythmic foundations too. And that's where polyrhythms can kind of come into play here. I've got a little example that I'm going to play for you that I created in GarageBand here. What I've got laid up here first is just the bass part, the pulse, okay. Now our next part here is kind of the second foundation, the second layer of rhythm, and you notice that it's not quite laid up the same. Now I've added a third part. Okay. Notice how all these different rhythms play on top of one another, but they're not the same, especially this last one here. Now, I think the example I'm really trying to stress here with polyrhythm is it's really noticeable within kind of Latin jazz music, but it is also present within jazz music, and that's where we get our whole concept of groove and swing down. So if we go to our next slide here, yep, dealing with syncopation. The concept of syncopation is related to polyrhythm and is central to jazz music. So what happens is in European music, we focus our strong beats mainly on beats 1 and 3. So in a 4/4 measure, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. In jazz, what we do is we use syncopation and we accent the weak beats. We actually flip it around. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's flipped around. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. The use of accents on 2 and 4 is also known as a backbeat. All right. And the use of backbeat is what helps create a groove, or what helps create the foundation where all the rhythm events occur, where swing kind of builds up. All right. Speaking of swing, let's go to our next slide here. Swing, which jazz music is all about. It's used to give jazz music a defined or specific groove, and it will vary depending on type and historical era. Now, what I mean about this is, as jazz evolved, the type of swing that was used evolved with it. Where, to start out with, within ragtime, it wasn't quite as strong, but as we got into the big band era, that's where swing really got defined. And then later on, getting into bebop, because the music started to speed up, the strength of swing also altered too. So when looking at different eras of jazz music here in the next 5 weeks, the concept of swing is going to vary just a little bit. in relating to regular classical musical rules here, in classical music, when you see 2/8 notes, and this is where swing comes from, you would play the 2/8 notes in equal division. So again, if our pulse would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to keep my finger snapping here. What would happen with the 8th notes is they'd be equally, you'd have to play 2 of them every time you would hear a snap. So in this case, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and like that. Okay. Now in jazz music, because the emphasis is syncopation and groove, these 8th notes would have an uneven division. The first would be a little longer than the second. So it would sound something like this. 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2. Okay? It'd be similar to saying doodle. So example, doodle, 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 and exiting the do and the a. Doodle, 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 like that. Okay? In music, if we were to notate it, instead of having 2/8 notes, we would have 8th notes in a triplet figure, and the first 2 would be tied together. And for your non-music majors out there, do not worry about this. I'm not going to have you try to write out jazz music and write out different types of 8th notes here. All right. I created a little example here again with GarageBand to give you what I mean in a more musical sense, the concept of straight 8th versus swing 8th. Okay, so let's check this out here. So the piano melody are all 8th notes playing straight. Now this is swing. So you noticed in that second part, the first note was longer than the second. Now let's go straight again. Okay, and listen to the cymbal part. So what I did with that example in the second half there to also emphasize the concept of swing, when I mentioned the concept of triplets, is I changed up the cymbal part. So instead of playing straight 8th notes, it was playing triplets. So instead of ta 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 ta, it was playing ta 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 ta. Okay, so that's kind of a kind of musical definition, if you will, of what swing is kind of like. What I'm going to do, besides using these lectures here, is I found some really good resources on YouTube dealing with swing, dealing with anticipation, and dealing with rhythm in general. And what I'm going to be doing is giving you guys links that those of you that don't have that strong of a musical background and a lot of this stuff is just going way over your head, I think those YouTube clips should really help you out and give you a good foundation as far as where we're going with rhythm. There's also some stuff on melody and on bass that I might also link up to for you guys to check out. So what we're going to do is stop the second lecture here at this point so I can get set up for the second half. So I will see you in a bit, and make sure that you also check out the next lecture here, probably labeled Lecture 2B. Alright, so see you in a bit.